All right, and now we're like really broadcasting, so we made it on. Everybody, welcome to the community chat. Maybe you saw me drinking from my Swedenborg mug earlier. It's irrelevant. Thanks so much for coming. This is a community chat, so as always, I'm going to suggest a couple things that have been on my mind that I'd like to talk about, but I want to hear from all of you what's going on. Looks like Carol says I'm going to miss this because my daughter's dog is being put down. I have to go with the vet with her. Well, that's a heavy start, and I had to go get a cat put down when I was younger, and it's like even if you know it's coming, that's really intense because just the end is here, and we got to be right there for it. So feeling for you and your daughter, Carol. Thanks anyway for hanging out. Hi, Keith. Hey, Matthew. I titled this show, did we learn anything from the Las Vegas shooting? I'm assuming this is international news. Just in case you haven't heard, there was a mass shooting in Las Vegas. There was somebody opened up fire on a crowd at a music festival with like 20,000 people, and ended up there were more than 50 people dead and 500 almost wounded. I remember when I first got on my phone, you get these like news alerts up on it, and when it first came out, I just saw like 3 of the 4 news alerts were about it, and I was like, well, that's something. But I think the reason that I wanted to pick this topic is I want to hear what you guys think. And I know you obviously think it's a tragedy, but do we pull anything out of this? I mean, what do we look to for comfort or for inspiration? And because it's just such a staggering amount of violence. So that's where I'm with that. So I'd love to hear from you guys. What's it been like for you? Have you been hearing about it? And what are your thoughts on it? And do you know anyone who's been impacted by it personally? And what do we do? Like, how do we usefully metabolize this? Is it just something that this is a news event, it's out there's nothing I can do about it? Or is there something that I can bring, or something I can learn from it? Or should I be going and getting involved directly with some kind of relief effort? I know that in Las Vegas, there was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people donating to blood banks and trying to do their part, which always seems to be that people are spurred into positive action by this kind of stuff. So, hey, Ellie. Hey, everyone. She's joining from the Netherlands. Yeah, where's everybody from? If you want to give a quick shout out to your place of origin or of current residency. So thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in the middle of the day today. Cynthia says it's very sad. And that's actually, it's a succinct statement, but that's a great point. Because that was what hit me, I think, especially with this one, is this just like sadness. And you don't necessarily feel like, oh, there's something I can do, because it all seems so senseless. And so I think it's important to just feel that emotion. Like, this is sad. And you feel sad for the people, because people are just doing such a normal thing. And then to just have their entire life upended like that is intense. So I really appreciate that, Cynthia. Looks like we got Keith in from Pennsylvania. Preliminal is Milwaukee. Donna Brad is Massachusetts. We got some United States as well as the Netherlands. London, hey, welcome. So this is good time slot for Europe. Great to have you here. Germany, okay, good. So we're starting to fill out our map a little bit. We got North America. We got what is that called? Western Europe. Yeah. So glad to have you all. And Curtis says interesting topic. And yeah, so I'm wondering what you guys have to add, because I have things I could go on about, but I want to hear what was your reaction and what do we learn from it? And I also wonder, like, is the guy who did it, is he evil? It seems like he's pretty evil. I mean, sometimes in these things I think, oh, this person is deranged. This guy had such premeditation, and he was doing things. I read stories saying he was going to, he scoped other locations, like Boston and Chicago, that he might shoot from. So is he evil, or is there an explanation? I know I can't know for sure, but did he know exactly what he was doing, or was he just mentally ill but still high functioning? So we have British Columbia, Westchester, that's Brian from Swedenborg Foundation. Hey. Minimal says there are people in the dark suffering and alienated. Psychosis seems demonic. So it could well be this guy's writing some kind of story, or in the way Swedenborg would describe it, there's actually hell, and in touch with you, and they're slowly over the years working you into this state of mind where you think this is the answer or this is the right thing to do. I mean, Swedenborg says all evil is from hell. So this guy, to commit that kind of evil, you've got to be in touch with some kind of hell, but we never know. Eric Seattleborg, and Cynthia says, I believe he was evil, which it could. Swedenborg does seem to break it out that some people are. And evil would mean You know the harm you're causing, and you're doing it because you want to. Opened Maya says, I don't believe the mainstream story. And what do you think the story is? I'd be interested because I haven't heard any possible counter narrative. So what do you mean by that? Soul Purpose Artist says, what would Swedenborg tell us about the shooter's process in the afterlife? And I think Swedenborg seems to indicate that everybody has a positive experience initially in the afterlife. Now, granted, he only describes like the entry into it in one major place, but he talks about you're among angels, but if you have some kind of negativity or evil in your heart, you eventually push away from them. So with that description, you would think he would have this initial period of, everything's okay, but then like have to come to terms with what he did. Then again, you get people like Howard Storm who had their NDEs starting with something really negative. So I don't know whether he would immediately be facing what he did, or whether this is like, for some reason I can't stay in heaven until at least either you get that sorted out, or it becomes obvious that you did it intentionally, and that's how you smell. You smell like a killer, so you can't stick around there. Preliminal says I should change my YouTube name. No way. I like trying to. I'm going to get it a couple of years from now. Ellie Mulder says, first thing I thought. Oh, could you scroll up a little bit, Stuart? I just lost that one. First thing I thought on the Vegas shooting must be that evil got to him. Don't think the shooter is evil. Seems like evil has a way of its own. Yeah, and that's a Swedenborgian way to look at it. That somehow, because of the mind he had, he was a target that hell knows. I can get action in the world here, and somehow set him on this path. And that Swedenborg does say that when angels think about evil, they don't think about particular people, they think about evils and falsities. So like you wouldn't think about, that guy is the source of that. You would think about mass shooting and murder, and that's what hell is. It is, it's an interesting way, and maybe it's the right way to look at people. Opened Maya says, demons do indeed cause such devastation, but this, like 9/11, was man-made, right? Oh, Cynthia says, my husband thinks it was the government doing it. Wow. So it could be, so it's interesting that, because, and I think part of the reason why people are thinking about it, because it's so senseless. Like, why did this happen? And there's not a clear motive. When I first heard it as a shooting, I was like, what is this? Is a terrorist thing or something? But it doesn't seem, the guy didn't claim allegiance to anything. They're still trying to unravel a motive even now. Matthew Bush says, like the hurricane, many people brought out their helpful side, which is absolutely true. We're looking for the positive. Speaking of the positive, Mr. Houston, there is good in everyone. Life is all about understanding and forgiveness. And Swedenborg says that the neighbor, when we say like love your neighbor, the neighbor actually is the good in somebody. So, it seems to me like even despite anything you may have done, if you're willing to repent from that, it's not too late. So it could well be that if this guy is under the influence of evil and didn't really, even though he knew what he was doing, he didn't have as much control as you'd think, could well be that he gets free of that. Interesting. And then Open My Eyes says, those manipulating these events are demonically occupied. So this would be hell is somewhere in the equation, but we just don't know exactly where that is. So interesting. And I want to... Mind with Heart says, maybe Divine Providence allowed this for good. I don't hear much talk yet about gun control, but I hope that will be the outcome. Swedenborg does say that evils have to be seen before they can be addressed. So it could be that, something tips us over on a larger scale to where in the end good comes out of it, even if that's no consolation to the people who are going through it. So it's a good point. And that even if as terrible as it seems, there has to be something eventually things will work out, or else Providence wouldn't have let the whole thing go through. Soul Purpose Artist says, was the shooter trying to send a big message to the world? Wonder what that would have been. Yeah, and if so, why didn't you leave a message? And why would you send a message that way? Was it? And Eric R says, was it Divine Providence where Swedenborg addresses the problem of evil? Yes, I'd say Divine Providence is his. Is that right, Cara? Yeah, Cara's about to come in. She's in the green room right now. Divine Providence is probably his most straightforward, most extended treatment of what we call the problem of evil. So, we have someone from Guntersville, Alabama. Welcome, Candy. And Gabriel says, it was a setup. I saw a video from a cab driver, shots from the 4th floor. Okay. So we don't even know exactly what happened. And I think that's part of why you don't make spiritual judgments, is you don't know. None of us know everything about the situation. We're trying to piece it together, hook it up just like that. So, Cara, do you want to come in and hang out for a minute? We got a high-tech way of bringing Cara Dom in here. It's going to be via chair. And so you all know Cara. She's a Latin consultant for New Century Edition and Theological Works of Emanuel Swedenborg. And I just want to get you in here for a little while to hear about a couple of things. Do you hear what we were talking about before? We're talking about the Las Vegas shooting and sort of what's the spiritual stuff behind it. Like, do we know that this is evil? Is that guy evil? Does good come out of it? Where does that good come out of it? I just want to say Dottie right there says there's a note pictured on a side table with a pen, but no one's conveyed what it said. They just said it wasn't a suicide note. So, hey, Ellie says, hey, Cara, great to see you on screen again. You know Ellie, right? Okay, great. Ben Wells says, do you believe that the chronic problem with loneliness in America is the reason men get so detached to hurt people? Is there a societal does our society sort of like lend itself to isolation, that kind of thing? So any of those thoughts or anything you want to weigh in on here? How does Las Vegas weigh on your mind this week, or are you trying to like stay out of it because there's not much we can do from where we are?
Yeah, I do often have that reaction to the big news. It feels so heavy to me that it doesn't feel useful for me to get in there and try to figure it out. It seems so unsolvable. Yeah. And this week, just my own friends and my own people were having big challenges in their life, and that kind of distracted me. And it's all, for me, it's all an adventure in trying not to let those dark forces take over all my awareness, and try to remember there's good here somewhere, and I wish we could see it more, is what I've been thinking.
Yes. Right. Well, and that's a good point, because there's got to be a point to which, because I know of people that there's problems all over the world, but some people get almost debilitated by not being able to. And I want, like, that's got to be, that's not coming, not that those people are evil, but heaven would probably, even though they're knowing that there's problems, it's probably more about, like, no, just do the good you can do where you are in your life. So anything that's trying to work against that. So I think that would be like what is it called? Like a falsified truth.
That's a good point, because I've been thinking, I guess I really am an empath, as people say. Like I feel stuff that people are feeling, but how?
Well, is that like Perla Minimal says, isolation and alienation. Many feel heartbroken, and angry at the world, lacking wisdom or any faith. So, but you have this heartbroken part of it, right?
Yes, but it's a good point. Is it really, I think of that as coming from a good place because I care about these people and their suffering, but maybe it's, the bad guys, the basement boys, getting in there and making me obsess about that. Sure. Instead of carrying on with doing my job or doing my dishes, or what I mean.
It's got to be something good that they're starting. Swedenborg often talks like they'll use your own good against you. It's interesting that could you go up one or two, Stuart? Because it was Matthew Bush, I think, said, we have lost our community spirit. Too many people are alone. And I think about what Swedenborg says about community and the importance of community to spiritual life, both that you're like in heaven, you have your tight communities, but then that as a member of heaven, you see yourself as this giant community, like the body. But we don't always have that same feeling of we're part of a team with the human race. We feel sort of like, I don't know what you guys are. Are you my enemies? Are you my friends? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That's not always as apparent there.
And I have heard somebody said back there, I have heard some men just talking about that they're, because of the macho masculinity thing we've set up for ourselves in this culture, that it is hard for them to find like heartfelt community with other men. I don't know. Yeah. It's just another one of the thousands of factors. Yeah.
Well, luckily, when people look at me, they can tell, oh, you're not macho. Like, do you need help, sir? That's what they say. But no, And it does, right? If there's any segment of the population that is underserved with services, you got to pay attention to that, And I do wonder, like, if men don't necessarily have as many easy paths to the love side of thing, it's more like a stress to wisdom or that sort of thing. It's Sharon Spruill says it's hard to feel community when people act so aggressively and angrily toward each other. And it's kind of like you think about family and your siblings, are like doing stuff, messing with you. The only reason that stays together is okay, we're a family. But if it was such a large thing as the human race, it's hard to think, even the person that's tailgating me, like that we're part of any kind of community, because it's so easy there's too many people in the world to really care about each one. Just get out of my space, so it's tough.
And we're wired to sort of consider ourselves first, but it's really tricky to keep that from turning into like narcissism.
That's right.
And just considering the experience of another person is a huge act of rising above your natural disposition.
Totally. And it's not like once you've done it once, you always are going to do it afterwards. Yeah. Oh, Ellie says that perhaps the good is growing, and that's why there are such awful evil outbreaks, like Vegas.
Cross my fingers. Well, I hope so.
Doesn't Swedenborg describe this spiritual process in all of us, and then the larger spiritual world as when goodness approaches, evil gets stirred up, agitated.
Yeah. Yep. That's what he says. So that is one way to look at it. Like, may it be so, is all I can say. May it be so. But meanwhile, all the people affected by that horribleness is tough to take.
Yeah, sorry. Ben Wells said, did Swedenborg ever mention murder? What happens in the spirit world? There's a lot of things we could say about that. I want to say that he recounts in his Journal of Spiritual Experiences somebody who had killed someone else by poison, and that the person they killed suddenly appeared in front of them and accused them, like, hey, you poisoned me to death, because that person was denying that they had done it. But there seems to be this, like, if you admit and condemn the things that you've done, it doesn't seem like there's not like there's a bunch of punishments in line for things you've done in the world, right. Even though it's not like they just evaporate. But if you're denying it, there's very good technology to make sure that nobody gets fooled.
Yeah, right. You're gonna have to face up to whatever you've done and however people respond to you.
Yeah.
I love that definition of the use of a person is just the effect that they have on other people. When we talk about what is the use of our being here, it's just the general effect you have on other people. And that is such a big thing. It seems like so simple, like whether you just say, oh, can I hold the door for you at the supermarket, or hand somebody the thing they dropped. It seems so easy to just have a friendly effect on people.
Yeah.
But apparently it's not.
Yeah, right. And we could go on about, Swedenborg says that, the murder, the commandment, you shouldn't kill. That's all true on the literal level. It's also on a spiritual level. You shouldn't hate or try to destroy someone's reputation. And on a spiritual level, you don't try to corrupt somebody. So there's definitely this no to murder on a lot of levels. So certainly it's something that's against divine order. It's just like in other spiritual traditions. This is like, no, you can't go around killing people. That's just not. It's just not okay.
Not okay. Not okay.
Hey, could you scroll up a teeny bit, Stuart? There was a which is more evil question that I thought was interesting. This one. Which would be more evil? If he did it to get back at the world, lost his money, or for religious reasons like terrorism? And of course, this is why I think Swedenborg is saying you can never judge for sure that the same action can be 1,000 people can do the same action, and to angels all those actions look different
depending on their motivations, their intentions. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah,
so either of those could have, you could be doing something for religious reasons if you were like born in some kind of cult or sect that is telling you when you're young and impressionable, this is what you have to do, and you go out. It could be that there's not a lot of fault for you because you were so programmed by especially religious things can just like seize somebody's mind. But then again, if you know what there could be the other end of that would be like, what you're doing, you're not, but you're like sort of bringing these principles that are supposed to be good and corrupting them to evil. That could be really serious.
man.
And then the money thing, it could be, yeah, right, if you're just your love of the world, that could be like, or it could be more serious because you're putting money above the lives of so many people. So
Right.
the answer is, nobody knows, man.
Yeah.
So this is why you come to these community chats, to learn nothing.
That's right.
Eric
To be
R.
confirmed in the mystery.
Eric R. says both result from distorted thinking.
Yeah.
Dottie Dig says, let's go to Bonnie. These are all good stuff. Could you scroll up just a teeny tiny bit? I think evil used mental illness, psychotic drugs, the fascinations with guns, love of money, no religion, probably ego, is like a perfect storm for a mass shooting to do what evil tries to do, to try to depress us, right? So that there are factors like that. Think about correspondences. Swedenborg seems to talk about that. Where there are corresponding things on Earth, there can be a connection
Right.
with heaven or hell.
Right.
So if we've got in our mind the raw materials, that she's describing, does that make it easier for hell to get in there? And then,
Yeah, man.
Stuart, can I see the one that was just below that? There were so many people who acted as heroes that night
Yeah.
and helped to save lives. I don't know if I could have the presence of mind to do that rather than just run for my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard a fascinating podcast on what makes people act like heroes in the moment. And it was essentially just like all the people who they interviewed, all these people who did these heroic things where they really risked their life for somebody else. And every one of them said, "Oh, it seemed like I had to do it." Like, it just seemed like that. So I don't know. You may feel like you don't have that in you, but maybe this is God coming in. And they just,
Yeah.
at certain times, it's like, here we go.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe it's that.
Yes, I often wonder, what would I do in that situation? I don't think I can know until
Yeah.
I'm in it. But
Yeah. Hey, goodbye, Mr. Houston. Thank you so much. He's in England and he's tuning out now. Thanks for joining us. Donna Bratt says, how does a person get to the point to take things out on others that have nothing to do with the hurt felt? Which is exactly right. Like, how could you say, whatever's going on in your life, like, I know what I'll do. Just pick a bunch of people at this show and just shoot them all. It doesn't
make any kind of sane sense.
Yeah, we've got to have these like paranoid or like victim, like these somehow the I'm showing this world that got me or something like that. And isn't it? It's just the dehumanization of people is sort of the essence of love of self. It's like whatever happened to me, what I want to say, how I view the world is more important than everybody else's life, and that's like the ultimate expression of that, right? I mean, that seems like that when Swedenborg talks about love of self. Some people think like self-esteem or no, love of self is like I and what I am and believe is the primary thing in the universe.
The thing, right? The central thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I can't imagine it. But bless his heart. I hope. I always like to think of the people in the other world just getting with the best therapists immediately.
Right. So that would be the shooter and then the victim.
Yes, yes.
Somehow there's I'm sure there have been events like that. I don't know about this one or not, but some kind of shootings or something where in the end everyone's okay with everyone else.
That's what I always think. That's what I sort of hope is the way it works.
Yeah.
That somehow we can come to some kind of understanding, some kind of compassion, some kind of forgiveness, some kind of
it feels like
regret. You know, it just depends where you are in the story.
And how do you make it right? You know, like it seems like not fair. Like
I agree.
That guy's gonna take so much from so many people, but
so much.
So I mean, we're talking about that. What good can we ponder on regarding the victims on the other side? So, I mean, from near-death experiences and that sort of thing, like usually when people are just about to cross over and they don't want to come back, even when even when they sort of have a choice, like you could go back, they're like, nah, I love it here. So it's got to be. Gonda says, I like to think so, Cara. We don't know, but so it's got to be that those people there. Even though there's going to be some grief at the loss and everything, they're probably like just happier than any of us have been.
Yeah, my take is usually that they are all right. The victims of that shooting are all right. Yeah. Their families and their loved ones here are not all right.
That's right.
And but I don't know. That's just my gut response.
I think so. Well, we had a Tom Rose who was a paramedic and stuff on a show long ago where he talked about this thing called the hurricane. That when somebody got in a major trauma, that he was his paramedic picking him up and everything, and
Yes.
that he would say usually the person who went through it, no matter how horrific it was, these are people that survived.
Yeah, survivors. I was
but-
talking about the ones who actually got to graduate
Well,
to
yeah.
the other world.
Well, no, I'm gonna use
yes.
this person as an analog for those people. Even the person who survived, who went through the trauma,
Right.
they usually don't have a memory of it,
I
or
know.
they've had some kind of spiritual experience during it. So for them, it's not nearly as bad as it seems.
As the people who witnessed.
The people who, so the hurricane is like there in the eye, but everyone else in their life
Yes.
just gets nailed by this hurricane. So we've just last show was about these hurricanes. So I wonder, like the person who dies in a shooting, like there's some feeling, but mostly it's just this amazing homecoming and this graduation and all that. But it's the rest of us that really get nailed by the storm around that. You know?
Yeah. And it is, I mean, Swedenborg has that part where he talks about the reasons why people die when they do. I don't know how that takes into consideration these crazies
right.
that make things happen. But,
Yeah.
Who knows what kinds of growth their loved ones that are left behind will go through. Hopefully it's something. Maybe they'll come to God, or there's
Yeah.
something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just like big league ideas, that somehow nobody's time is an accident,
Right,
and
right.
everything can be turned to our good, even something like this, which seems crazy, but
It seems
but maybe
crazy.
so. We just had somebody up there saying, "Is anybody of anybody who's into Swedenborg in Houston, Texas?" And we don't yet have this, but we're trying to build. So the answer is like we can't really help you much, but we're trying. Nancy said that, and we're trying to build this community so that you guys can get together.
each other,
We're
yeah.
just converting a Facebook group that was called Swedenborg Online Discussion Team into sort of a meetup thing. So if you guys want to search on Facebook, Swedenborg Online Discussion Team, we're going to start to try to put people together who want to get together there. Okay, I'm just. So Eric R. says he had been living outside of mainstream society for quite some time, living on gambling winnings that can't provide a feeling of usefulness. So that's interesting. If you unplug, because Swedenborg says when I talk about human bodies, heaven is you serve I'm
Yeah.
doing something that serves a greater whole. So if you're detached from that, that makes it easier to not value.
So true. Wow, that's a great point. And also Swedenborg's point that the usefulness thing is what creates the happiness thing.
That's right.
Um,
Hey, Keith Curry.
Keith
Let's give
Curry.
it. So Keith Curry has done a super chat, which means he's donated $2 to help us do not just stuff like this where we sit in front of a camera, but all of our shows and programs and book translations and everything that Swedenborg Foundation does. If any of you want to do it, there's a little $sign by where you type in your comments. Thanks so much, Keith. Really appreciate it, and we're going to try our best to make it worth your while. And I wonder, we're getting through this show pretty fast. So I want to see if there's anything else we want to talk about. Like we just had this Spiral show. Did you guys watch the Spiral show? The Spirals of the Spirit, it was called. Fascinating topic, and I know you got to check it out. So do you have any thoughts on it? Because you'd think, like, what a show about spirals, what's that going to be? But with Swedenborg weaves into this amazing narrative about life. So just like any thoughts and reaction, and anyone who's watching now, did you guys have any reactions to the Spiral show if you saw it? So
well, first of all, I wore my spiral earrings in honor of the spiral.
oh, can we get a close-up of that? No. Yeah. Nancy, you're so welcome. So she says everyone's full of usefulness here. So and hey, thanks Ben Wells.
Yay,
Appreciate
Ben
it. Your
Wells.
support, and we
Nice.
won't let you down. Okay, so Spiral show.
So fast. I've always been fascinated with the golden spiral and like the
Yeah.
Fibonacci sequence and all those things.
Hard not to be.
In nature. That hawk, the flight of that hawk, and those sunflower seeds and everything.
Yeah.
And to think that, of course, if it's a correspondence, that is, a picture of
Yeah.
something that's going on in the spiritual world or
Right.
in spiritual reality of some way. So to me, I was just really inspired by that show. I remember a friend years ago
Thanks, Bureau.
talked
You'll
about.
get if you donate to support us. Not only will you support the programs we're doing in the translation and everything, you'll get a round of applause from these two people. Okay.
A friend years ago who was a Swedenborg.
Oh, sorry,
fanatic.
I keep cutting you off. But Ben says that the Spirals episode was awesome. It was exactly what I needed.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
Glad to hear it, Ben. And Bree says the Spiral show was so good. Okay, so you're telling your friend
Oh,
about.
well, a friend was telling me years ago about that when she read these passages about the spirals and the different directions, she said, I wonder if your DNA, I mean, our DNA helixes that we talked about in the show,
Yeah.
do they actually turn direction? And that's why we can, our regeneration influences our progeny, our descendants. And that was just a really interesting question that she brought up years and years ago. And then just a few weeks ago, I was having a discussion with somebody about whether our trying to be better people makes a difference for our kids. And I brought up that helix, well, I think there's something about changing the direction of our DNA. And they were like, no, there's not that. No. But it was interesting that he was talking about, I don't know, I wasn't paying 100% attention to what was on the physical level and what was in the spiritual level. But all that directionality in those passages was so fascinating.
It's hard to suss that out sometimes. And that he didn't know about the double helix at the time, right? I mean, they discovered that in like 50 something. Crick and Watson and the lady who never gets credit, who didn't this, I forget her name. Somebody said, Curtis, have you ever seen spirals on cave walls in ancient ruins? No, but I've seen like people. I saw this like fake movie that had those on like some glyphs recently. It was like an alien abduction movie, but no, that's cool that they're there. And yes, and how music and notes can lift or lower our thoughts and energy. Donna Brown and Swedenborg certainly talks about the spirits around him. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
You make it possible. The spirits around him hearing the music he was hearing, and they're like so swooned by it that they leave him alone or something. That music really can lift the spirits. Telling you.
Whoa,
that Swedenborg says
awesome.
We say funny things like that because that actually comes through the spiritual world. Soul Purpose Artist says, could real angels from heaven have been there for the victims? Yeah.
I think so.
I think very much. Well, so there's a story that I think we told on our channel of, there was a terrorist attack in Nice, France. Someone drove a truck and hit a bunch of people in a crowd, and that we talked about the parents of one of the victims were worried that his body had been left there all night. 2 people came and sat with him that the parents later learned about, and the father said that made him think of Swedenborg's idea of 2 angels, because he had found our programs and that sort of thing. So that's an example of physical people being angels, but I certainly think people would be waking up if they were killed with angels just as tangibly around them.
I don't know. I don't know if I'm crazy, but I sure picture as many angels as possible around scenarios like that.
Yes.
Around.
Certainly. Ben,
to help things go as well as they can go.
Well, Swedenborg talks about that heaven packed with angels that are all doing something useful. So what are you doing? It's got to be stuff like that. That something with that much pain stuff has got to be like, this is priority number 1 for heaven. So there's going to be these experts in there that we don't always see the operation of, but for the people that are crossing over, it's got to be awesome.
That's what I'm thinking.
Bonnie says, Spiral Show is great. All shows are, I can't find the $sign. Well, it's just right below where you type say something. There's this little like gray icon with a $. But if you do or if you don't donate, either way, it's totally fine. We're just happy that you guys are here.
Your participation in the conversation.
I'm broke, just as good so as I just send love, and that's it. Well, I think that's part of like when people do donate, they get another thing they get to feel is like, hey, I'm helping make this possible for everybody. That's the point. And it's like just like sometimes I give and sometimes I don't. So it's like we're all just like putting it together. So don't feel bad if you can't.
And the participation in the conversation is also a gift to everybody. So.
It's your time and energy, and if we had a bunch of donations but nobody cared about what we were talking about, in a way it wouldn't matter what we were, because the whole thing would dissolve because nobody's in. So another thing that makes us go is people care, and not only care but turn these concepts into a happier life, because that proves it's something that's worth anything and worth supporting. So everybody's doing a great job.
Great job, everybody.
Love is the best gift. Okay. Jen Blossom said, I had an aunt that was murdered a few years ago. I dreamt about her, and in the dream I walked up to her and asked her about it. She looked at me and said she had no idea what I was talking about. That I love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And it reminds me of there's a story of spiritual experiences of some kind. I forget what it was called, but or somebody said that her friend had been murdered, and we mentioned it on the show. Her friend had been murdered while counseling an inmate, and she had this spiritual experience where she got to meet her friend, and her friend was like basically, showed her this handful of sparkling gems, and the person understood, like, even in those last horrible moments, it was like God turned them into little rainbows or something like that. That she said she was fine. And somebody else said, like, their friend laughed. Oh, then I think it was that same one. Her friend laughed, and she said that gentle chiding did more to put my mind at ease than anything else. So,
nice.
Yeah. And Sharon says, it's how I tithe that helps me feel useful to donate to a cause I love. Awesome. Well, we so much appreciate you and everybody. And Candy says, best I could do today. It's the best. Thank you so much. And yeah, everything is good. That's the point we're trying to make. So her husband had somehow managed to let go of this justified anger, which that Bureau says that. That's intense, to in a situation like that. Like, is it the unforgivable? We are working, just so you guys know, there's a pipeline to a show about forgiveness that's going to be coming up, Swedenborg Life. Not for a while, maybe in a month or so. But so we will be looking into this. How do you do it? When do you do it? What does it look like? Is there any spiritual insight from Swedenborg on the whole thing? We're getting close to the end of the show here. We have 4 more minutes.
Yikes.
So we want to, in case you guys were ever wondering, how do you guys do this show?
Oh, thanks, Patreon.
Oh, hey, A Mind with a Heart, join Patreon. Thank you so much. There's a link to Patreon right there. That's a way that we can give you something back for supporting the show. If you go there, you'll find that every week we have little behind-the-scenes sorts of takes and just a little. It's not better than Swedenborgian Life. It's not like we're hiding the good stuff behind the paywall. But this is just if you want a little extra. It's like a thanks for making this the good stuff available to everyone. So patreon.com/OffTheLeftEye. It's like this week is like outtakes from when we were trying to film something, and you'll see that we're very good at what we do. But thanks so much, Mind with a Heart. Gina, thank you so much for your donation.
Thank you.
And I was gonna say, you might want to know how we put this show together. And we actually took a picture of our setup. This is before Kara showed up, but this is it. So Stuart is just like he seems like he's off. Do you want to put your hand out into the screen here? Okay. Well, he looks like he's off in some netherworld, but he's just like right there. And like we have a much bigger setup for like when we're filming the show, but this is just we put a second screen on the computer. So in case anyone's wondering, just what your donations go to. So Bonnie says, I was wanting a show about forgiveness. That's awesome. Everyone online, Donna Bratt says, everyone online has been sharing a song. I Choose Love by Shauna Galloway. Awesome. I haven't heard. Have you heard that song?
No.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to check it out. Hey, I'm Sikh Christian and love your content. Well, we're so glad to have you, Sonny.
Nice.
And it's awesome that we feel like this is something that can add to your picture of spiritual life.
How's the fridge? That is my refrigerator.
Okay.
And I was very embarrassed that front and center were not 1, but 2 butter containers.
Well, so
butter is the best.
So we got footage of cars, but I will say that Matt. So you see when I move my head here, there's Matt. Hey, Matt.
Hi. Hi, Matt.
Matt, he's been there the whole time. He color corrected that so the fridge looked much worse than it actually was. Yeah.
But we didn't move a thing. That was my
Eric
actual
R.
fridge.
says per episode
you.
donation on Patreon. Thank you so
Nice.
much for participating in both of those. It's great to have you here. And yeah.
Can I just say something about forgiveness?
Yeah,
Or we
do
have to
that.
get to end?
No.
Just in town right now, there's a display in one of our gathering halls called the Forgiveness Project.
So when you say town, we're talking about Philadelphia area, the Bryn Athyn Cathedral.
That's right. It's
Bryn
at the Bryn
Athyn Cathedral.
And it's these big posters. There's, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 of them with pictures of people that have been through horrific things. Often, like it might be some in the Syrian conflict or sort of the big name places where hard things are happening.
Yeah.
And just it has a picture of the person that just found that they had to come to some sense of forgiveness in their heart about that their loved one had been killed or whatever.
Yeah.
And then they would make contact often with the person who perpetrated the wrong. And it's just all these stories, and there they are with their arms around each other. It's very powerful stuff.
Wow.
And I think these things travel around. So
Yeah.
keep your eye out
What's
for
it called?
The Forgiveness Project.
The Forgiveness Project. I bet there's something on the web about it.
Yeah, and I've seen them. I saw one in a church over in England a few years ago when I was there. So, yeah, look for it. I bet you could find it. They're very moving, very powerful.
Final thought, Tony says, on a previous lesson you asked, will war ever end on Earth? Optimistically, I say yes, but as I've seen from Swedenborg's dialogues, even heaven is an all peace for those who choose selfish needs. So, because even if you're following, love of dominion, even in heaven there can be some kind of friction. Things are never perfect, right? There's always still those cycles. Hopefully, though, as you go up, like as we spiral up,
Let's spiral up.
the low end of the spiral never dips all the way down into the kind of horrific things like we're seeing in Las Vegas and around the world. So we're gonna we're gonna leave it and say, hey, that spiral only goes up on a large scale if we all put in our time and effort. So thanks so much, Gonda. Thank you for being here. I'm glad you're enjoying the work here. Kara, thanks so much. If we could everyone give Kara a nice hand for hanging out. We will be here doing a panel show on Monday night. Kara will be out of town, but the lovely Shada Sullivan will be replacing her.
She's wonderful.
Yeah, and then we'll have Jonathan and Chelsea and myself. So we'll be doing a lot of Q&A there. So join us Monday night at 8 o'clock. And thank you so much, everyone. This was awesome. It was great to hear your thoughts on things and just get to spend this time. Hope you have a great weekend.